If you'd like to participate in the discussion or leave us feedback, you can contact us at levelupyourgamingpodcast@gmail.com or find us on Facebook at facebook.com/levelupyourgaming. If you like the content and want to hear more of the show, subscribing will ensure you don't miss an episode. New episodes come out almost every Wednesday. Also, please review, tell a friend about the podcast, or share with your gaming group. Now sit back and enjoy the episode.
Welcome into the Level Up Gaming Podcast. My name is Aaron, and joining me once again, I have Josh. Josh, how you doing tonight?
I am doing pretty good. I know we had talked about last week that I was busy as hell.
Yeah.
I'm really glad you were able to come out and watch the performance my daughter put on. Thank you very much coming out and doing that.
It was a lot of fun. It was a good time.
Yeah, I was surprised at just how well they actually were. We had also talked about some other things, including while you were out here, we were talking about different things that we had been, different media that we've been consuming.
Yes, we had talked about different media that we've been consuming. It's a topic that I think we're gonna touch on here sometime soon.
Yeah, that sounds fun. I did finish that game that I had been playing. 100% completed it, top to bottom, front to back, inside to outside, secret endings and all. And so I do have some things I'd like to talk about with that. I think that that topic coming up would be a lot of fun.
No, I think that'd be a good topic. But I thought like a little palate cleanser for this week would be if we haven't done in a while, so let's do let's make a one shot.
You know, that sounds like an excellent idea. I like that very much. We had talked about before we started here. We've got a list of different options for titles that we're going to go in mostly blind and come up with something on the fly. And the only one that I really had any oomph on was the title A Field Guide to Whiskey.
All right, so A Field Guide to Whiskey. What would you say your hook would be for A Field Guide to Whiskey?
Well, the only reason I have this in my head is because I ran this past one of the players in one of my other games. And because he was like, how do you do this? And I put the whole thing down and I showed him how we do our let's make a one shots. And as an example, we brought this one up. And pitching it back and forth, the thought that I had was that you and your party have been assigned as journalists or by a reputable paper in the big city to head out into the country to a small town's whiskey festival to do some reporting on it.
Okay, that's interesting. I like that. And
his suggestion was that one of the large barrels from the main like the distillery that wins every year, their main barrel has been stolen. It's disappeared. It's vanished. And now you have a mystery in a small town about where the whiskey has went.
Okay, all right, I like it. I think that's that gives you your reason to be there, plus a good the objective is pretty clear. So I think the hook is pretty straight up.
Yeah.
There. Can't think of anything else that would twist that hook there. I'm trying to think of another way to like add my flair to it, but I'll tell you what, we're gonna run with the hook that you and your friend went ahead and created. That'd be Pat.
We can just use Pat.
You and Pat created, and then I will run through the rest of the game with you.
Fantastic. I thought would be a really fun little extra on this would be that the townsfolk one of the first things they tell you when you start your investigation is that this theft definitely has nothing to do with the werewolves. Just going to put it out there. Has nothing to do with the werewolves. And just leave it at that.
Just walk away. Answer no more questions other than that. It's very clever. Yeah, I guess you could do the werewolves. You could do the vampires. You could do the. Name your menacing supernatural creature that just like it's certainly that creature.
Yeah, it's definitely not the werewolves. And the thing is, and I was thinking this, and like it was popping in my head when we were talking about this. When you had mentioned you want to do a Let's Make One Shot, I was thinking about this, and it's definitely not the werewolves. Is in fact a red herring.
Yes.
Like, because it definitely isn't the werewolves.
Yeah.
But you
but you're taken aback. You're like, wait, what? The werewolves?
What do you mean the werewolves? Why does this town have werewolves? And so I think a nice thing to start with this is let's sort of come up with the town.
Okay. I mean, it's probably just your very standard small town feel. Now, if you're going medieval, it's probably easy to keep the townspeople down to a minimum of like, 50 to, upwards of 100 people. If you are doing a modern setting, your small town probably is in the hundreds to 1,000 potentially. Depending on how small or how smallish large of a town you want to have. I often think of in a small town setting that you have that one place that everybody congregates, but the truth of the matter is that you can't just have one small place that everybody congregates because that's not realistic. In medieval setting, the tavern sort of works itself out, but in more of a modern setting, yeah, probably also have that plus some chainy restaurant that exists out there. So,
well, I was thinking that if we're having a whiskey festival, that you'd have some sort of fairgrounds where there'd be various people setting up, right? And so that could be your centralized sort of your investigation area where you can check out the various distilleries or the food vendors and whatnot. And so you'd have a centralized location, but it would be the festival hasn't started yet. You showed up a couple of days early, and it turns out this thing has happened.
Okay, so everyone's come in from around there. Now, is the distillery in question local to the town, or is it a further place?
That's a good question, because like if they're shipping a big barrel of their stuff over, I guess you're talking like this is their single barrel. This is the one thing they've been, getting ready for probably several years at this point, because this is their, their creme de la creme. This is what they're offering at the festival. If they are not local, like they would have to be not local in the sense that it's like a 2-day hike to wherever they're distilling.
Yeah, I'd probably say don't make them local. And the reason why is you're probably going to have local distilleries and other people who have come in locally. And, if the barrel was stolen, if they're not local, you could easily say the theft happened on the way to the town or as they approached the town. So it got closer to the town and then the theft happened. And so now they don't have their prized barrel of whiskey. The reason why I say do that is that with your tag for it's definitely not a werewolf or wasn't the werewolves. Okay. It could now be. It's also a site nearby that you can have the players investigate. So now you've got your distillery location, you have your site nearby, and it gives you some deviation from like kind of the standard. You're just in one spot trying to discover where this barrel went. It's not like they brought it in and somebody's taken it in the festival. So I guess you kind of get to split that delineation. Do you want it stolen and you want to be really focused on like the fairground, town square kind of location, or do you want it to be more of a let's go look at this site where the theft happened, and then maybe it ends up in the town. Somebody stole it, brought it back to the town. Maybe it is the werewolves out there in their wild werewolf den, and we're gonna go take a look at the werewolves. So it gives you a couple options there, which is a little bit more of the misdirect. And sure enough, the gang who stole this on the road would have used several props that look like claws and bite marks, all that. It definitely looks like the werewolves.
Yeah, the werewolves are a clear misdirect. It has to be. And I think that because you're absolutely right. The distillery that's lost their stuff can't be local because they've definitely lost it on the road.
Yes.
So that gives you, first of all, the fairgrounds to investigate. You talk to the other distilleries, find out, who's got a grudge, what's going on, were these people set to win again this year as they were last year? Is it a big deal? You've got the distillery itself and the road along the way. So you've got a place where the barrel was stolen. So there can be an investigation there. You've got obvious tracks off into the woods. I think there should be a lake. What do you think? Do you like a lake?
Well, so if you do the lake, that's clearly where
the werewolves
the
are.
Actual werewolves would
Yeah. I think that like this pristine, like I'm just imagining a small town that has a whiskey festival that's up in the hills, has a big lake next to it. That werewolves live out on the island and they're cool with the townsfolk and everybody's happy with it, but the townsfolk look out for the werewolves. Like the werewolves are not the problem, Aaron. They're not the problem. Why do you bigots keep going after these werewolves?
We live in harmony alongside the werewolf.
Yeah, it's fun that way. And so you've got a whiskey festival in like a fairground area, just like a park that they're having this festival at. People come from the surrounding areas to showcase their whiskeys. This distillery is one, maybe the last couple of years. They've got like a history of winning, and that is sort of the reason why their other distilleries are upset with them.
If you want to go a little dark here with the werewolf, I just thought about you popped it up. You could say that this small town is the capital of fairgrounds and festivals. Okay, it's a fun little aside thing. So the werewolf story eventually pays itself off. The players decide to go down the route fully. Okay, and because they wish to live in harmony alongside the werewolf, they sacrifice the king and queen of the festival effort to the werewolves. So it's definitely not the werewolves that did this, because the werewolves wouldn't do it because they get their tribute.
They're waiting for the tributes. Yes.
Well,
I mean, it doesn't even have to be like that,
or some type of tribute. They appease the werewolves in some way. If you don't want to go as dark.
I like the king, the anointed king of the festival is sacrificed to the werewolves at the end of the festival. But the players only hear that and don't like, oh crap, and don't realize that it's like a goat. It's like that's another thing they have at the festival is they anoint a goat as the king of the thing, and they get the goat all drunk, and it's hilarious. Okay, maybe
that's even better. So you go with the dark theme of sacrifice, okay, but
and it's just another red herring.
And it's only, but you don't even tell the players about that. It's the investigation that leads to the werewolves, because your players, by darn it, if you're gonna tell them there are werewolves out there, they better go find those werewolves. All right. But by finding the werewolves, that's how they discover about the sacrifice, and then that's what brings them back. So now it's like, do we trust the townspeople? Do we not? Like, it's a nice little twist on everything. And it's a great red herring path.
If you're gonna go the werewolf path, when you get out there, you have to find out that the werewolves, have got their own little society out there, and they've got a fish and chip shop. And of course, what can you get at the fish and chip shop on the lake with the werewolves? Well, obviously, they're serving red herring.
Yes, no, it's I like the I like the werewolf aspect. So that's some ways that you can play with the werewolf aspect, because I feel like the players have to kind of meander in that direction.
So there's a bunch of investigation. When they're being misled to think that it is the werewolves. There's rivalries between the different distilleries. There's definitely the barrel has been taken, probably by some bandits, some highwaymen, if you would.
Yeah, some bandits who were probably hired by a rival brewery, distillery. They obviously, this company wins every year, and so they're sick of it. Or it was stolen by the bandits to get their, to get the barrel, to dissect it and re-engineer the whiskey, so they've got the, they end up with the new whiskey, distillery recipe or whatever. A couple different options that you can kind of go with there. Either way, it's the crux of it is going to be X distillery at the fair holds enough of a grudge to hire bandits to go take the barrel.
Yeah, I think that sounds great. So we're looking for a setback.
Yes. So if your players decide to go the werewolf route, the setback is they got bunk.
Yeah.
That's the setback. If your players choose not to go down the werewolf route, I'm trying to think of like a good setback.
If they go and they find the werewolves offer to help them, and they sniff out and track down the bandits. Or if they track the bandits down by like talking to the different distilleries and realizing that somebody's hired some outside contractors, maybe by reading it on a ledger or something like that, and they track the bandits down, they have their confrontation with the bandits, right? Bandits say, we stowed it in this cave off in the hills. You go there, and the barrel has been stolen again.
So either way, it's either going to be the werewolves or the band.
Either way, you get to the point where, the werewolves like help you out and they track it down, and the barrel is no longer there.
Got it.
Right? Either way. So like the bandits stole it from for a distillery.
Yep.
So distillery A has their stuff stolen. Distillery B hires some bandits to steal the distillery A's stuff. Well, now you've got to find out who knew about it.
Okay.
And that would be obviously Distillery C.
There you go.
So and Distillery
C's.
You find out, I would have to assume that Distillery C's own barrel, and they've got to be local. They got to be in town. Okay. They
what am I
haven't
saying?
won-
We stole the barrel to swap it. You're gonna steal the barrel to use
have
it
to.
and win the festival.
Their own
That's the
stuff
way.
is lost for years, and they're like, we're the only ones that are in town. We have to win, and so they had to steal a barrel that was going to win.
Yep.
And so, like you then, by the time you find out the barrel is missing, Distillery A has shipped in one of their lesser quality barrels. So they're still at the show. And then there's a whole rigmarole about tasting. And they fight about saying like if your players can't figure out that Distillery C has stolen it, that there is that tasters like this tastes just like Distillery A's whiskey when they get to C.
It would actually be very cool if you explained like what. So in the setup for this, if you explained why their barrel, like their whiskey, was so good, and then when you get back to it, like you realize, okay, the barrel's missing now. Oh, the fair is starting. We have to get back to the fair. Like maybe we can sniff out who stole it. Okay, and then you go through the tastings. Okay, this is gonna be a great like in-person game. You can give everybody a little like board, like have them taste.
Oh yeah. Little taste tests and stuff like that.
Yeah, and then you can have them. You can have them sniff out like a great little prop. And what the players can do is they can deduce at some point that this is the barrel of whiskey that was stolen. Because this is how it's supposed to taste.
Yeah. It could have like a specific smoky, peaty sort of flavor to it that is only available in those hills where that distillery is by itself. And maybe when the players are going, oh, that'd be fantastic. The players are going to investigate. They run across, the charred remains of the actual bandit encounter that has the claw marks that leads them to think it's the werewolves or track it back to the bandits. But there's a specific smoky flavor in the air because of the wood that they use.
So your final bit here again. So if I was going to talk about like an encounter that you would have, the werewolves would probably, or the bandits potentially, depending on which way the players ended up going and trying to figure things out, would be sort of your fight along the way. Some little combat to spice this up. I would almost have your climax and resolution at the place, being able to like point the finger and be like, that's the culprit. And almost in a kind of like an old sort of mystery way, like and this is the one who's done it, and we know why, and then you rip off the logo or something like that, and behind it is the original stamped logo, something to that effect.
Absolutely.
And that's how you resolve it. So like there's no big epic fight at the end. There's a combat somewhere in the middle here. You could have a big epic fight at the end if you want. But I just think that it sort of lends itself better to we've solved the mystery there than trying to engineer a big epic fight in the fairground. It could be, maybe these are very hostile distillery owners, and they've decided to bring out like John the Ox, and he's gonna fight the champion of Distillery C or whatever. It could be that way. A funny thing that I thought about in the puzzle section, sort of, would be that when you're investigating the one site, supposedly, let's say like a player decides like, I don't think it's the werewolves, I think it's somebody else, and they decide to make like a good roll or something, like on a really high DC or something like that. You could give them a clue that it's not werewolves by being like, and you understand that werewolves mask their numbers by walking in single file lines or something like that.
Just go for it. Yeah. Like you find tufts of hair and for some reason you stick it to your mouth and just lick the little tuft of hair, and you realize this isn't werewolf hair. This is obviously badger
Obviously,
hair, or like
sheep's wool.
rabbit, or something like that. And that could be part of it. It could be like maybe Distillery B's logo is a jackalope, and so it's like it's rabbit hair. And Distillery C, because it's the town, because they do the whole goat thing. That's who Distillery C is. They've got the goat. They bring the goat. They are the goat. But they haven't won in ages, so how can they even be called the goat?
So, I like the idea of figuring out the bad guy there. And again, like I said, if you really want to do a fight at this point, you could do a big epic fight. Have your players fight off against some thugs and a big goon, all that stuff. It's more of a hoo-ha brawl sort of thing. So your reporters, so
Yeah. Well,
yeah,
and at this point, if your players are the kind of players that enjoy the big fight, they want the big fight, they're expecting the big fight, that Distillery C, the ones that have sort of orchestrated this whole brouhaha in the first place, maybe they thought it would be best, since Distillery A brought in their own another barrel, and Distillery B has been was in on the shenanigans in the first place. Maybe the whiskey is now tainted. Maybe there's been something added to it, and the whole fairgrounds is sort of a powder keg waiting to go up. And
okay.
So you could play into not poison, but like just people are ready to fight. Whiskey makes you mean, sort of thing. And you could play into it, and you could have like a barroom brawl, sort of, in the fairgrounds, so that as a cover for Distillery C to try and escape, or not be blamed for whatever's going on.
So yeah, you could do something like that. Actually, that's not a terrible thing to do, because it plays into the resolution a little bit. Both resolutions sort of work. So obviously your reporters. So I feel like your resolution should be that you now report the outcomes of the festival. So if there was this epic, we pointed the finger at who had done it, sort of thing. Your article that you write is going to be called A Field Guide to Whiskey, and one of them would be about theft, okay, and the nefarious nature of the whiskey, rivalry. Or if there's a big old brawl at the end of it, you go, and whiskey makes some mean son of a bitch. Okay, so something like that. And then I think that would be also nice is to key in on the werewolves, and then maybe do a little epilogue thing with the werewolves where they didn't get their goat, and so now the werewolves are coming for blood.
But like, blood is just the name of one of the distilleries in town, and they're just like, hey, the goat didn't give us a goat this year because they screwed up. So what you got?
Yeah, you leave it at that. So you can have like again that's your hook into other things might happen in like the future
absolutely.
story. It's just I feel like you can't leave the werewolf and unpulled on there at the very end, even if the werewolves didn't do it. Unless you have a better resolution.
No, I think that like if we're gonna have sort of this festival, you've got this whodunit sort of running around trying to track down this barrel of whiskey because everybody sort of wants it. A non-fight resolution is a great way to end things. If you need the fight, you can have the festival brawl, and you blame it on the people adding things to the whiskeys, because everybody's tasting and whatnot. And then, really the resolution is that article. And you can even go as far as, make your players make their rolls for how well they wrote it to give them like a little spice at the end and just play it up, how well their story went over. And if your players enjoy this sort of playing the journalists that get sent out into these missions, that's absolutely its own sort of hook for future stories. You can send players on all sorts of fun little journalistic endeavors, and they could be, investigators wherever they show up looking for the story.
Yeah, definitely.
That could be a lot of fun. We do need to, if you're going to tell the story, you can't just say Whiskey A, Whiskey B, and Whiskey C. We need to have names for some of these things. The werewolves should probably have at least a named werewolf or two. The people who are running distilleries probably will have the names of the distilleries, or their distilleries. They'll have their own names as well. So you're going to need a couple of NPCs. You're going to need, I would assume, some sort of master of ceremonies that you meet up with at the very beginning that tells you what's happened and gives you the exposition.
You need the 3 layers of whiskey rivals. Okay, you're going to need probably the head of the city, somebody who facilitates your being there. Kind of your liaison between everyone. Master of ceremonies, as you spoke to him about. You will want the leader of the werewolves. You will want potentially the leader of the bandits. I think that would suffice as everybody that you would want to have. I would call them.
Oh no!
Did you freeze?
We're back. You froze pretty bad. We're gonna find out what happens with the recording later, because that was bad.
I saw your face.
Mark the timestamp, because that could be a problem. I did not get anything of what you just said there.
So I was going to say that you need to have those 6 NPCs, because those are the most necessary NPCs, and at a bare minimum, I would say those are the ones that you absolutely have to have.
Well, those are the only ones that need names. Like, they can run into all sorts of other people along the way. The players can go and wander around through town. It is a small town. This is a festival. There is distillery. You're going to have people that were involved in the shipping of the barrels, or people working at the distilleries, or some sort of ferryman to get you across the lake to where the werewolves are. But none of those people have names. Because they're not important. They exist in the story to facilitate the story. This is definitely not a game for children. This is definitely a game for adults, preferably adults that like drinking whiskey, because then you could just sit around, drink whiskey, and play this game. It's probably best that there isn't a big fight scene at the end of it, because, if you've been drinking this entire one shot, it's probably going to be a real sloppy fight.
That's the whole point. In terms of maps, I would say that you definitely want your fairgrounds. You don't even need the fairgrounds technically, but like a big block that maybe represents that. Your crime scene's probably like a more necessary map. Your bandit hideout is probably unnecessary, but useful to have. The werewolf map.
Unless you want the bandit hideout to be like a big event. Like, if your players like the combat and you don't want to do the big brawl at the end, you want to do the brawl in the middle, make the bandit hideout more interesting. But you don't need to like go out of your way for it. It can just be like a simple 5-room dungeon and call it.
Precisely. And then you also have the werewolf map, which again, you could debate your necessity for it, but I think it's nice to have a map typically when you're like, it's only 4 maps. I don't feel like it's an arduous thing to add to this game.
Yeah. And like the the fairground map, I would, you could just do it like a little drawing. It doesn't need to be intricate unless you're having a combat there. The crime scene and the werewolves, if you're not doing a combat or anything like that, a picture is probably fine, like a roadside with some debris for the crime scene, and just like a nice island lake at night with werewolves on it. How hard can a photo of that be? I've got like a dozen of them.
And then you've got yourself in terms of handouts. If you want to do the little whiskey tasting thing there at the end, I think the whiskey tastings would be a fun handout if you were in person. Mm-hmm. Otherwise, I don't see a need for anything. But that'd be a clever way to do it. Especially if somebody at your table has a very refined palate for whiskey, it could be fun to do that.
But please drink responsibly and in moderation, because sloppy tabletop role playing is sloppy.
Yeah, this is tasting. I'm not saying full glasses.
We're
Five glasses of whiskey right there for you.
Shots. This is like, let's do shots the entire game instead of rolling. No, all of that sounds like a terrible idea. But it's a fun topic, and you can, if you want to really lean into it, there are plenty of books and resources about the ways that whiskeys differ and flavor profiles and temperaments, and you could incorporate a lot of the lingo into your storytelling to give it a real sense of actuality that would be fun to bring to the table.
Yeah, that'd be very cool. And then in terms of like bosses, mobs, NPCs, you have the werewolves, you have the bandits, and then potentially the champion of like the Whiskey Sea group, depending if you want to do that big fight at the end.
Yeah.
It's fairly straightforward there. If you are going to do a big fight in the middle, you could add like a bandit leader that's more special. Or you could have a combat with the werewolf, like, head of the pack or something like that. I don't know. Like, make it your own in that regard. But those are the only, stat based things I would be concerned about.
Yeah. No, I think that pretty much covers the whole thing, top to bottom. It's a fun little whiskey adventure.
It is a fun little whiskey adventure, and it can be a fun little time for a nice little adult role playing table. So it's a real fun situation there. This could easily probably run more than one night. Obviously, a one shot doesn't need to be a single night game, but it would be encapsulated short, like smallly within the guise of what is a one shot.
Yeah. I think that covers everything.
You have anything else you want to add to this one?
I think we've got it.
All right. A field guide to whiskey. Let us know your thoughts on a field guide to whiskey, or if you have another idea for one of these let's make a one shots. Level Up Your Gaming Podcast at gmail.com or facebook.com/levelupyourgaming. We are also on YouTube, so go ahead and smash the like button there. Subscribe to it on YouTube. That's how you want to listen to it. Otherwise, go ahead and subscribe to it on your favorite podcasting site. Review it, recommend it to a friend, all those good things. And that wraps us up for the week. So, for Josh, I'm Aaron. Have a good week, everyone.
Bye.